Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is a 3-hour course titled Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha. This is where I help you to understand what are the teachings of the Buddha and what they are not. And then I'm going to help you to understand the very first teaching of the Buddha called the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding the problem in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In 4 simple statements that you can independently verify, the Buddha helps you to understand this, because the whole goal of the path to enlightenment and the teachings of the Buddha is to be able to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. There'll be no anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this has been eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. So the Buddha's teachings start out with the Four Noble Truths to be able to help you understand what the cause of these feelings are. If you didn't understand what the cause of them are, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. So this is what I'm going to be sharing with you over the next 3 hours. And of course, I'm going to be pausing for questions at different times, helping you guys to get any clarity that you need based on your questions. But what we're going to do to get started is do some meditation so that way you guys can practice a bit of the teachings of the Buddha through meditation. And then afterwards, I'll move into explaining to you what are the teachings of the Buddha and what aren't the teachings of the Buddha. We'll take a little break in between, and then we'll move into that talk on the very first teaching of the Buddha called the Four Noble Truths. So if you'd like to join for meditation, we have some chants over there on the cabinet. This is what we used in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you're online and you would like to see these chants, you can go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com. If you click on free books and then you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll be able to see the daily chanting sheet, because we're going to use these chants in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. It's important to keep in mind that these chants, there's not a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship or prayer or anything like that. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. This is how they were able to commit them to their memory, because everything the Buddha taught was oral. They didn't have books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like that 2,500 years ago. The technology to write things down didn't actually exist 2,500 years ago in that region of the world. Now, you probably don't see writing something down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, that was technology. So everything the Buddha taught was oral, and they just recited his teachings in order to commit them to their memory, because that way they could actually practice his teachings. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. In fact, if you look at the English translations of these chants, I suspect that the Buddha didn't even create these chants, because there's a lot of respect and appreciation and gratitude for the Buddha inside this chant, the 3 chants that we do. And the Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, because this would be ego or arrogance if somebody chose to do this. And the Buddha wouldn't have gone around and told people, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me, because this would be ego and putting yourself above other people. And someone who's gotten to enlightenment doesn't have that in their mind. So these chants, if you'd like to chant them yourself as I'm easing into meditation, you'll notice that it gets more benefit out of the meditation, because it helps you to develop awareness of mind and awareness of the breath as you're easing into the meditation. And just understand that it's not a ritual or prayer or anything like that. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to actually be providing you guidance, where you'll hear me instructing you and guiding you in the meditation while we're actually doing the meditation together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating, whether you're here at the temple or online, we'll just all be meditating together. And during that period of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds in whatever environment you're in, whether you're at the temple here or at home, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's just not possible. If you have a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound during meditation, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated or agitated. You'll see this when we get to the Four Noble Truths today, that's what's causing these discontent feelings. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to learn about the teachings of the Buddha. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these different positions at different times based on the condition of the body and what you need. It's kind of like having different tools. As you're progressing on your journey to enlightenment, the Buddha's giving you these different tools to be able to use, to be able to help you, to be able to get to enlightenment. And since your body can't be in the same position permanently, you're going to need these different positions at different times. And there's a course actually coming up Monday through Friday called the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course. It's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. where I'm going to be teaching all 4 positions as part of the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment. But today, I'll just kind of help you guys to understand a little bit about the seated position so that you guys can kind of make yourself more comfortable. It's important to understand that there's not just one way to sit. You can sit however you like. If there was just one way to sit, that would be permanence. But we don't live in a permanent world. We live in an impermanent world. Different people are going to find different things comfortable. Some people sit on the floor. Some people have a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, something like this. You can really sit however you're comfortable. What I'm going to share with you are suggestions for you to consider, but you can sit however you like, whether it's something that I share with you or something you figured out on your own, because in the teachings of the Buddha, you're training the mind. You're not training the body. You're training the mind. So everything he's guiding you towards is training the mind, not the body. So my thoughts here are just things for you to consider. That if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help you to have a soft seat and be more comfortable. If you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, typically just doing that lightly works out best, because then you won't have the pain in the lower body. It'll allow the circulation to flow. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This will get your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, again, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If you would like to do this, you can, if you find that to be comfortable. But there's other options here as well. Some people put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up, or maybe you just rest your hands comfortably in your lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. And if you're in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair, it's the same thing. You can sit however you like. Some people put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed. And then if you're sitting in a chair, you can also put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. So you would like your mind to be attentive and alert during this meditation, because during meditation, you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you need your mind to be attentive and alert during this period of time. Whereas if you were slouched like this, your mind would tend to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle, where your mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And then if you guys would like to join along, you're more than welcome to. But then I'm going to come back in with the guidance to be able to help you from there. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti Piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to share with you what are the teachings of the Buddha and what they are not. This is a way to introduce you to his teachings. And then ultimately, like I mentioned, after our break, we'll get to the very first teaching of the Buddha. I'm going to be pausing a few times as we go. And as I do, you guys are welcome to ask questions. Whether you're here, you're online, you're welcome to ask questions. For those of you here at the temple, if you guys could use the microphones, we have them in the white bowl there behind you. All you need to do is press the gray button, hold this up to your chin. You're going to see the lights come on the microphone, and then you can speak and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then if you'd like to keep these mics with you, you're welcome to do that, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question. You can just share the microphone. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so that we don't get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, you can ask your questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions you like that way. So first, let me just help you to be able to understand what is a Buddha. Because if you're going to be introduced to the teachings of the Buddha, you would like to know, what is a Buddha? How do we know who is a Buddha and who's not a Buddha? Okay, so there's three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha, and then there's some other criteria as well that I'll share with you. Essentially, what a Buddha is they're a human being who has figured out how to get to enlightenment on their own, without the help of any teachers or any guides, that they figure out how to get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where the mind's permanently peaceful and joyful. And they do this through their own discovery, their own cultivation of wisdom. Then once they get to enlightenment, they will dedicate the rest of their life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three primary criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to helping countless people get to enlightenment. Through their independently discovered teachings, they will share those teachings. Then they will preserve their teachings so that after their death, countless more people can get to enlightenment. And what allows them to be able to do this is that they have a certain quality of mind that is unique and different, that their mind functions the same way as an average human being. Everybody's human mind functions exactly the same. The contents of what's in our mind is different, but in terms of the way that our mind functions is exactly the same. But an individual who's going to become a Buddha, they have a deep, profound memory, even in the unenlightened state, that they can remember countless details from their current life and their past life as well. This is what allows them to accumulate all the wisdom to be able to actually get to enlightenment in their last life by themselves, is that they remember details of their past lives and this life as well. So the way you might think about this is like, for you, you have like a hard drive in your mind where you can store your memory and the things that are happening to you. And you have a certain limited capacity. You might have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte or something like this. And now, maybe in the last 5 or 10 years, you can remember pretty much all the things that you were up to and what you've been doing over the last, kind of little bit of your life. But if you think back to your childhood, you just kind of have spotty memories. This is because you've had to delete old files in order to store new files. And that limited capacity requires you to be able to do that. That because you have a limited capacity, once you reach capacity, you delete these old files. So now you can store these new files of the things that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. An individual who's going to become a Buddha, which by the way is very rare in the world, they don't have to do that. They have an unlimited capacity to be able to store information within their own mind, so they can remember countless details about their current life. Like from their childhood, for example, they would remember countless details all throughout their life and from their previous lives as well. So this is a quality of mind that an individual who's going to become a Buddha will have. They don't have to overwrite the memories of their mind, so they can accumulate wisdom to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They can also quickly determine the condition of someone else's mind by spending time with that person. And then if that person's a student, they can offer that person teachings to be able to help them to be able to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. This is how a Buddha is able to be so effective at helping countless people get to enlightenment, is that they can observe the quality of their student's mind and then help them with teachings that is going to be able to allow them to remove certain pollutions from the mind and then be able to make their way closer and closer to enlightenment. And then lastly, a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, they're going to be practicing those same things as well, because they understand that a student is learning just as much from their spoken words as they are from their actions, that a Buddha is teaching through their actions, not just through their spoken words. So a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. If they're teaching you to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, they're not going to be bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive on the other side when they're actually in day-to-day life. They're going to be actually practicing those exact same things that they're teaching in their actual teachings. So these are the criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. And we refer to this person as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. The reason why is that you can get to enlightenment, and if you're studying with someone who's not a Buddha, you would get to enlightenment, but there's probably going to be certain things that your mind holds on to, maybe like 5%, 10%, 20% of the things. Maybe there's a certain meditation that you're doing that didn't really contribute to your enlightenment, but you're still doing it anyway out of respect for your teacher, right? An individual who's a Buddha, they actually don't have any teachers or guides, so they don't hold on to any extra baggage. So if an individual who's a Buddha is actually trying a certain meditation and it works to help them improve the condition of their mind, making their way to enlightenment, they know that this is actually working and they will retain that as part of their practice. But if they try something that doesn't work and it doesn't help them to get to enlightenment, they discard it. So by the time they get to enlightenment, they're fully, perfectly enlightened. They know exactly what the path to enlightenment is. And then they spend the rest of their life essentially illuminating that path, making it bright and clear for other people exactly how to get to this enlightened mental state. So that's why we refer to this type of individual as fully, perfectly enlightened, because they don't have any extra baggage hanging around. Where someone who's gotten to enlightenment with the help of teachers and guides, they would potentially have some extra baggage around. Right? So this person is very rare in the world. You'll find some people that will tell you everybody is a Buddha. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never said this. The Buddha shared how rare it is that a Buddha exists in the world. If everybody was a Buddha, he wouldn't have said that it was so rare. The last Buddha that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need teachers and guides to help you because it is so rare for this type of individual to exist in the world. In terms of what the teachings of the Buddha are, it's a path to attaining enlightenment in this life through purification of the mind, through training of the mind. You're purifying the mind of certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And now you're making your way closer and closer to this mental state of enlightenment. What enlightenment is that as you purify your mind, the qualities of enlightenment start shining through more and more. And by the time you ultimately get to enlightenment through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, you'll see that your mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And this is a permanent mental state. By the time you get to this mental state, you'll never again experience anger or frustration or any of these other discontent feelings. The fear, the guilt, the shame, the frustration, agitation, annoyance, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. This can all be eliminated from the mind because as you guys are going to hear today is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not the outside world. Oftentimes people believe that it's the outside world that's causing these things, but it's actually what's going on within your own mind that's causing these feelings. So if it was other people who was causing these feelings, you'd never be able to eliminate them because you can't train 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. But you can train your mind to be able to uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings so that then you can get to the peace and joy. And that's what the path to enlightenment is you're purifying your mind of the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings. And by uprooting those and getting those out of the mind, you'll experience the peace and joy. And while we say it's attaining enlightenment, one of the ways you might think about this is that your mind is already enlightened, but you have these pollutions that are hindering you from experiencing that. It's kind of like if there was the sun and the clouds were in front of the sun's there, right? It's just that you got to get the clouds out of the way so the rays of the sun can start shining through. And the difference is here, of course, in this analogy, that the clouds are going to come back and cover up the sun at some point. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. That as you peel away these pollutions out of the mind, the rays of enlightenment, the qualities of enlightenment will start shining through more and more and more and more. So it's not like an instantaneous thing. This is one of the big myths about the life story of the Buddha. People think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. If you study his original teachings, you can see this isn't true. He talks about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that gradually led to his enlightenment. It took him 6 years to get to enlightenment. And you know this to be true because everything you've ever done in life has been that way. Whether it's learning how to read, write, or speak a certain language, whether it's some job or occupation, some skill you have, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led to that improvement in your life. So it's the same thing with enlightenment as well. And as you're getting rid of these pollutions of the mind, you'll notice that the mind has a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Because now the mind's going to be performing optimally. When these pollutions are in the mind, you'll lack focus and concentration, clarity, and memory. You'll find it difficult to have those qualities of mind. But when you get rid of these pollutions, your mind will be performing optimally, and you'll see that your mind will function like this. You'll notice that you'll have this deep wisdom about the world around you that other people don't actually have. And this is going to help you to navigate the world more peacefully. You'll notice that you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody and anybody. Where right now you might find that to be difficult, right? You might be in certain situations where maybe you're grumpy and irritable and frustrated and you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. Your mind will be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody and anybody that you're around. You'll notice that you're not causing any harm to other people or other beings, because whenever you put out harm, harm is going to come back to you, and you will have learned on the path to enlightenment what are the things that can potentially cause harm, and then not causing other beings harm. You'll notice that because of this, your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. Because when you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships, it actually damages your relationships. And then all that stuff's going to come back to you. People are going to be, bitter and harsh and hostile to you too. But by the time you purify your mind and you're being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody for an extended period of time, you'll notice more and more people are functioning that way towards you too. That your relationships are completely harmonious and they're at ease. You'll notice that you're not even in a bad mood anymore, that it's physically impossible to experience a bad mood because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing it. What's producing it is something that the Buddha taught called the 10 fetters. These are 10 individual pollutions or taints that are in the mind. Now, they refer to them as fetters during the lifetime of the Buddha, and we refer to them that way now too, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were a criminal and they were interested in keeping you in a certain area, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. This was a shackle and a chain and a ball. And then they would keep you in this kind of field, and you would just be out there roaming around in the field with this big heavy ball, right? So when the Buddha figured out what these pollutions are, he referred to them as a fetter because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. And just like the prisoner, if you release the fetter off of the ankle, you're now free, you're liberated. The Buddha talked about enlightenment in the same way, that when you get rid of these fetters out of the mind is now free. It's no longer bound up, experiencing things like stress and anxiety and frustration and agitation and annoyance and all those other feelings. So the deepest level of detail in the pollutions in the mind are the 10 fetters. And that's something that you learn later as you progress in your journey to enlightenment. But then there's also a way to talk about these pollutions at more of a high level. These are referred to as the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. This is craving, anger, and ignorance. And when we talk about purification of the mind, that's what you're purifying the mind of the 10 fetters, right? But ultimately, we can talk about it as this higher level, which is craving, anger, and ignorance. I'll just introduce you to this, and then at a future date, you can go into more detail to understand this. What craving is where the mind has longing, yearning, where it chases after the objects of its affection. It's like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. It's like an unquenchable thirst that the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. And the mind thinks, if I can just get what I want, everything will be perfect, right? And now when you're chasing after something, if you get what you want, you're happy. You experience pleasant feelings. You get excited, elated, all these thrill, euphoria in the mind. But if you don't get what you want, what you're craving, the mind will experience the anger, the frustration, the sadness, and all these other discontent feelings. So the mind chases and chases and chases. It's like, I don't feel good. What do I need to feel better? A boyfriend or girlfriend, that'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. And the mind will chase after that for a while. And then you get it and you feel happy when you first get it. But then over time that fades away. And then the mind's like, what do I need? More money. That'll do it. Let me chase that. More money will fix everything. So then it chases that. And if you get it, you'll be happy. And if you don't, you'll be frustrated. But even if you get it, it'll fade away. The happiness will fade away. The mind's like, what do I need now? Jewelry. New pair of shoes, a new house, a new car. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. Let me go to Thailand on vacation. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand, right? So the mind will chase and chase and chase and chase. It's chasing the objects of its affection, thinking something external is going to fix this inner mind, right? It's basing its inner feelings on something external. And again, if the mind gets its cravings, its desires, its longing, yearning fulfilled, you'll get those pleasant feelings. But if you don't, you'll get the painful ones. And one of the things that can arise is the anger. This is the second pollution. The anger, the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility, the hatred, the ill will. And then there's lesser versions like annoyance and dislike, right? Well, if this is arising, oftentimes the mind attributes these feelings to something external. The mind will firmly believe that it's other people who are causing you to be angry. And this is where the mind becomes unskillful. It will tend to push people away or it'll push the situation away. You might have pushed away friends or family out of your life thinking that that will solve your problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because when you push them away, you still get annoyed. You still get frustrated. You haven't solved your problem yet. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with people, like through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, right? And you can see that didn't solve the problem either, because those people tend to leave out of your life, or you damage the relationship, and now they are bitter and harsh and hostile to you right back. Any number of things. Or the third thing that can happen is you might put your expectations on people. You might try to control them and pressure them and force them to do things your way. And you might even have people doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting their expectations on you and trying to control you, right? So this anger, when it's arising, it's actually coming from your own mind. It's coming from the cravings. But because of the third poison or the third pollution, the mind doesn't understand that, because of this ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. Now, a lot of people refer to it as ignorance. I don't tend to use that word because, remember, we're translating from what the Buddha said into English. And this word ignorance, it's a derogatory word. It's a degrading word. I would never refer to anybody as ignorant, and the Buddha wouldn't either, right? So a better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding that the mind has, the misperception, that because the mind doesn't understand what it doesn't understand, it continues to crave, and then it continues to have anger. When it doesn't get what it wants, that anger is arising. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that craving and anger continues in the mind. If it wasn't for this lack of wisdom, this confusion, the individual would have already eliminated their craving and anger. But because the mind has this lack of wisdom, it continues to crave and it continues to have this anger. So these are the three pollutions that you're purifying the mind of. Remember, at a more detailed level, it's called the 10 fetters, right? So now as you purify your mind of these pollutions, more and more the qualities of enlightenment will shine through. One of the things that you're gaining wisdom about is what's called the natural laws of existence. The Buddha taught you about the natural world around you. There are certain natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of these natural laws or not. For example, when we grew up, there was the natural law of gravity that we all struggled with. We lived in a world that we didn't understand. We lacked wisdom of this world, and we struggled, and we had difficulties. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we bumped our head, we broke our toys, and we cried and cried and cried. Oh, it was so hard for us when we were a little kid because we didn't understand the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And this natural law was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. And we got to a point by the time we were maybe 10, 12, 14 years old, where we might say we fully awoke to the natural law of gravity, meaning we fully cultivated wisdom about the natural law of gravity. We got to the point where we learned to tie our shoes real tight so that we didn't trip and fall over our shoelaces. We learned how to ride a bicycle, right? That we could now balance ourselves. We learned to stop being so giddy and bouncing around all the time. We're at the point now where we can climb ladders, we can ride motorbikes, we can fly all over the world with airplanes because we fully awoke to this natural law of gravity. We don't struggle with it anymore. And we make wiser decisions because of that wisdom that we have, and therefore we experience improved results. We experience wholesome results because of that. Well, there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And what the Buddha is teaching you is how the world is, so that you can understand through learning, through reflecting and practicing, what are these natural laws. And now you can cultivate the wisdom of it, and then you can make wiser and wiser decisions in your life to experience more and more improvements in your day-to-day life. It's important that you don't believe any of the teachings of the Buddha. He's not teaching you to believe anything. He's helping you to be able to learn, to reflect, and to practice. The learning is the intellectual understanding of his teachings, the investigation and examination of his teachings. That's what you're going to start to do today when we get to the very first teaching. But then you don't believe those teachings. You reflect on them because you live in this world and you've been interacting with these natural laws without realizing it. You can reflect and determine whether his teachings are true or false. Then you can practice his teachings, integrating them into your life to be able to see the improvement to the condition of your mind. mind. And in this way, you're not believing in these natural laws. You're cultivating the wisdom of them to be able to see the truth for yourself. Because you don't believe in the natural law of gravity. You can see for yourself that it's true. It's right there, right? We can all see it. We understand that that's the natural law of gravity. We don't believe in the natural law of gravity because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because someone convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. But with these natural laws, you can't believe them because you don't know what's true or false. You're still in ignorance. You're still in the unknowing of true reality. In order to purify your mind of craving, anger, and ignorance, you need to get to wisdom. And you can only do that through learning something intellectually, reflecting on it to determine whether it's true or false, but then practicing it to be able to see the truth for yourself that it actually works. And that's what you're doing with the teachings of the Buddha. So the Buddha didn't explain how the world should be, and that if we follow certain rules and commandments that the world would get better, right? He explained to you the way the world is. He's helping you understand the way the world is. How is this world truly constructed, and what are the natural laws that exist here? Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties. That's what we did with the natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, we cultivated the wisdom, and now we don't struggle with that any longer. So you're training your mind to experience complete peace and joy through cultivating wisdom of the natural laws of existence. And this natural law of Gama is one of the main natural laws that you're cultivating wisdom about. This word Gama, if it translated to just one English word, I would use it because it'd be much easier for everyone. What it means is cause and effect, or action and result. You might have heard this referred to as karma. This is the Sanskrit version of that. The original teachings of the Buddha and the Pali language, so people who study those will typically use the word Gama. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments or rewards. It's not even about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's not a bank account that you're depositing into and you're withdrawing from. It's not a black cloud that's following you around. It's literally the results of your decisions. That when you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome Gama, or wholesome results. And when you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome Gama, or unwholesome results. So as long as the mind is walking around with a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you will tend to make unwise decisions without even realizing it. This is why sometimes you can go into a conversation thinking you have all the best intentions in the world, and the conversation blows up on you and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Right? You're like confused. Or you watch the news and you're like, I don't understand why those people keep doing that. This is you living in a world that you don't understand. Or you hear something about your friends and family and you're like, I just don't understand why they keep doing that. That's because your mind's not understanding the world that you live in. So when you understand this natural law very deeply, you're not believing it. You cultivate the wisdom about it. Then you understand these things and why all these things are occurring. So this is what you're awakening to, is these natural laws. When we say awakening, it means to cultivate wisdom, because going through life sleeping is to go through life without wisdom of these natural laws. And now you're making decisions based in that ignorance or that unknowing of true reality. But when you're awake, you're cultivating wisdom, and now you understand the world that you live in, and now you're making decisions consciously to produce wholesome results for yourself in day-to-day life. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll only be experiencing wholesome results, wholesome Gama. You won't be experiencing any unwholesome Gama because your mind will be fully awake to these natural laws and you won't be making any unwise decisions. So this is the natural law that you're awakening to. And there's other natural laws besides this, but they all kind of fit under this umbrella of the natural law of Gama. The teachings of the Buddha are timeless. That what he spoke and he taught about 2,500 years ago, his teachings are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because he's teaching you about these natural laws, and these natural laws haven't changed, right? So he spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. So his teachings were taught in a way that is timeless. And if you study his original teachings, you'll be able to see how he spoke, that they're very clear, very concise, and very precise. And that's what I share with students. This is original words, so you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. So you don't need to change his teachings. You don't need to modify them. You don't need to go figure out how to get to enlightenment by yourself, because you wouldn't be able to do that. A Buddha's already done the hard work. They've already figured out how to get to enlightenment. You just need to learn and practice his teachings to be able to discover the truth for yourself. Now, the Buddha did teach about the cycle of rebirth. This is something that he taught about, and he did teach about these 5 realms of hell, animal realm, afflicted spirits, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. Like I mentioned, everything in the teachings of the Buddha, it's not based in belief. You can actually independently verify the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. You might not have that wisdom right now. You might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life, other than the fact that maybe at this particular moment, you can't remember what your past lives were, right? But there's actually the ability for you to cultivate the wisdom to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. But at the beginning of your journey like this, I don't suggest you go out and start looking at those things, because it doesn't really matter right now. Whatever happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter, right? Whatever may or may not happen in the future in terms of your rebirth doesn't matter right now, right? You're in this human realm. You have the ability to learn and grow and develop, and it's best to focus on that. I suggest people to set aside the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence, but then as students progress in their journey, I do help them to understand this. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Right? But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, right? Because there's all of these foundational teachings that you need before you actually get to that point. So I suggest you focus on those things. But the Buddha did teach these for a reason. And here's the reason why. When you start training your mind and you're removing this pollution out of your mind, there's a good possibility that you might start observing your past lives. You might start having vivid memories of your past lives. And if you start having vivid memories of, let's just say, being murdered, right? And these just keep reoccurring in your mind over and over and over again, and you didn't understand that that was from a past life, it could really shake you up. And you could think maybe you're going crazy, right? Or let's just say that you started to see some of these beings, like hell beings, or afflicted spirits, or heavenly beings. These are formless beings, right? Animals and humans, you understand, you've seen plenty of those, right? But these formless beings, some people can actually see them. And if you didn't understand that this is the way the world is, that it could really shake you up. You could think you're going crazy. But if you understand that this is the way the world is, there are hell beings, there are afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts, and there's heavenly beings, and they're all in the same time and space as us. They're not in some far distant land somewhere. That's what people typically think, that the heavenly realm is somewhere far up in the sky, and the hell realm is deep down into the core of the earth. This is all the same time and space as us. So just like there's a human being sitting in this chair, an animal could come sit in this chair as well, right? After I get up and leave, a animal could actually come and sit here as well. So these beings are all in the same time and space as us, and you might actually see some of these beings. And if you do, you can rest at ease knowing that this is normal, right? And some people can even communicate with these beings. You might actually get communication where you can actually hear them speaking to you. And just like you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody could be speaking very loudly, and you ignore those human beings that are speaking loudly, you can learn to do the same thing with these beings that are in the hell realm, the afflicted spirits, or the heavenly realm. But oftentimes people don't study this so that they don't understand these things. So again, I suggest you set this aside, but just understand the Buddha did teach this for a reason, because it's what's truly happening. It's the true reality of the world, and he's helping you to be able to cultivate wisdom about the world that you live in. The Buddha did teach about God, but he didn't make God as a central role in his teachings. Sometimes people say that the Buddha rejected God or he denied the existence of God. This isn't actually true. And for people who say that, they haven't actually penetrated deeply into the teachings of the Buddha. They're misunderstanding what the Buddha actually taught. He didn't put God at the center of his teachings, because it's not God who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. It's you. It's your decisions that determine whether you get to enlightenment or not. So he put you at the center of his teachings. But he did teach about this being because people had familiarity with this being. So you can actually get to enlightenment with a relationship with this being or without a relationship with this being. It's just like a neighbor, right? You could have a neighbor and you could choose to have a relationship with them. And it's kind of nice having a relationship with this neighbor because, you know, if you need to borrow some salt, you've got somebody to go ask some salt. Or if you're going on vacation, you can be like, hey, would you mind looking over my house while I'm gone? Right? It's kind of nice having a relationship with your neighbor, but you don't have to. right? You could totally go through life without having a relationship with your neighbor too. That's a possibility. So it's the same thing with this being of God. So oftentimes people have been taught various things that aren't true about this being. Some people have been taught that this being controls you or punishes you or rewards you and things like this. So there's things that you would need to learn and understand, which tomorrow at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I'm going to be teaching about this topic because it's happened to come up in our group learning program. It's in chapter 18 of our first book. So if you're interested in learning about this topic of either how to get to enlightenment with a relationship with God or without one, I'm going to be teaching this tomorrow. So the Buddha did teach about this being, but he didn't make it this being as a center of his teachings. The largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha is what's called the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is 45 large volumes of books. They're about this thick. Right? This is what we have left of the teachings of the Buddha. Everything that is in the Pali Canon, or I should say everything that the Buddha taught is not in the Pali Canon, right? This is just the largest, most complete collection we have left of the teachings of the Buddha. So there's these 45 large volumes of books that we refer to as the Pali Canon because originally it's in the Pali language. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't write anything down because they didn't have the technology to do that. But shortly after his death, they did have that technology and they started documenting his teachings. There was 500 enlightened beings who came together in order to document his teachings. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you will never forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. It's basically like upgrading your operating system. If you had an old archaic computer and you upgraded the operating system that it now performs better with this new operating system, it's the same thing that's going on with your mind. In the unenlightened state, you're kind of on this old archaic operating system. And now you're upgrading your mind to this new operating system. And once you do, you'll never forget those teachings. So by the time that the Buddha died and this technology was available, 500 of his students, his enlightened beings, remember there were countless of them, but 500 of them came together and they documented his teachings. And we refer to this as the Pali Canon, right? This is the largest, most complete collection we have of his teachings. The average person doesn't actually have access to this. Not because of any particular reason, it's just because it's expensive to print out, because it's 45 large volumes like this thick. Here in Thailand, if you were going to get a set of the Pali Canon, it'd be about 3 months of your salary, right? And the average Thai person doesn't have that money. You probably don't have any book collections worth 3 months of your salary, right? So the average Thai person, the average temple doesn't have access to these teachings. So the average person actually doesn't study with the original words of the Buddha. You might find that to be shocking, particularly if you come from a Christian background, because in Christianity, it's just one book, right? In Muslim teachings, it's just one book. It's just a Quran, right? So we would think like everybody would study with the Quran, everybody would study with the Bible. Well, in the teachings of the Buddha, that hasn't been the case. It's been an oral tradition that's been handed down from person to person to person to person to person. And because of this, it's very easy for things to be changed and modified in an oral tradition, either overtly or inadvertently. And the Buddha taught and warned against changing his teachings because it would be very unwise to change the teachings of a Buddha. But when you go back to his original teachings and you see what did he actually teach and what he didn't teach, that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So while there's about 500 million people that consider themselves to be Buddhist, there's a very small percentage of them that study with the original words of the Buddha. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one that actually studies with the original teachings of the Buddha. That's less than 1%. Right? So what we've done here is we've taken the Pali Canon and it's been consolidated into 13 books that are manageable for you to be able to learn and understand. And then I guide you through that and I give it away for free. Right? Because that was one of the barriers that people had. They weren't able to get access to his teachings. And this is hindering people from being able to get to enlightenment. So with modern technology like the internet, you can just download it for free. They didn't cost me anything, didn't cost you anything. You just download it, right? And then if you'd like a printed version, you can go print it yourself, right? Or if you like printed versions, we have them here. And I just ask you to reimburse us for the printing cost so that we can go print more for other people. Or some people, if you have access to Amazon in your country, you can order it on Amazon and you can get it that way, right? But because it's been consolidated, even if you were to purchase every single book, it's much more affordable for you. It's not 3 months of your salary, right? So you could actually print it for probably maybe $150. You could, if you were here in Thailand, you could print all 13 books, and now you have this consolidated version of the Pali Canon. And this is what you need to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So this book series is called The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden, right? Because these teachings have been hidden, not intentionally, but kind of unintentionally. They've been hidden over so many years. And now what I'm interested in doing is seeing them really shine in the world for more and more people to be able to get access to them. So one of the ways to think about what the teachings of the Buddha are is it's to heal from what hurts you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what the teachings of the Buddha are. It's to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. One of the ways we might think about it is like a self-help program, right? The most well-vetted, well-known self-help program that's ever existed, because it's been around for 2,500 years. If the Buddha was alive today, we would refer to him as a teacher, maybe even a life coach or a therapist, right? That's essentially what he's doing, is helping you with your mental health to be able to get to a point where you can heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is not the outside world. It's the inner world. So what you're doing is you're training your mind, the inner world, to be able to heal from what is hurting you. And that is what's going to now make the improvement into the condition of your mind in your life. So this is what the teachings of the Buddha are. And I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions. And then I'm going to share with you what the teachings of the Buddha are not. Do you guys have any questions on what the teachings of the Buddha are? Remember online? Sure, if you could use a microphone. For those of you guys online, you could put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. Yeah, just press the button. You're going to see the lights come on. And then just give it a second or so. And then you just hold it up to your chin.
So it's very hard to actually put into words the question that I had, but if we have cravings, then isn't it a craving to want an enlightenment?
Someone could crave it, but you don't have to. It's not the object itself that determines whether it's a craving, desire, attachment or not. It's how the mind is pursuing that particular thing. Let me give you an example that doesn't involve enlightenment, and then I'll explain to you more about this. Let's just say I was on my way to a hiking trail, and I'm going to go hiking, right? And I have this liter of water in my car. And now when I get to the hiking trail, I get out of the car and I leave the water in the car without realizing it. And now I'm like 30, 45 minutes down the trail, and I'm like, oh, my water. Oh my gosh, I forgot my water. And now I like run back to my car, right? Oh, my water. And now I maybe like twist my ankle on the way. I sling open the door. I'm like, oh, my water. Ah, I got my water. But now I can't even go on my hike because I twisted my ankle, right? Well, there could be someone else who does the exact same thing, right? That they have their liter of water. They forget it in the car. They're 30, 45 minutes down the trail. And it's like, I forgot my water. I want to be out here for a while. I'm going to be out here like 6 or 8 hours. I should probably go get my water. And now you turn around and you calmly make your way back to the car and you get your water and then you go about your day and you do your hike, right? So the object's the same. The only difference is the first person had craving, desire, attachment, where they were craving for it to be permanent. And when they didn't have what they wanted, their mind got all shaken up by that. The second person, they still needed the water, but they didn't have a craving for it. They understood like, I can just calmly go get my water, no big deal, right? So this enlightenment, this mental state, someone could be chasing after it and they'll never get to it that way. Their mind's longing, yearning for it. They're going to need to eliminate that craving, right? But you can also come to the middle where you're gradually pursuing enlightenment as a goal, objective, or interest. Because if you were chasing, you wouldn't be able to get to it because your mind still got craving, desire, attachment. And if you're not doing that, what the mind will tend to do is it'll swing all the way to the other side where it's dull and lethargic and lazy and complacent. And that's not going to produce enlightenment either. So you need to be able to come to the middle. That's what the Buddha is teaching you with all parts of your life, not just the pursuit of enlightenment, but everything. You'd like to gradually walk towards enlightenment through making wise decisions. And you can do this and train your mind to be able to do this. So just the fact that someone would like to get to enlightenment isn't what determines whether it's a craving, desire, attachment. It's if the mind's longing, yearning for it and chasing it, chasing after the objects of its affection. And now, if you're doing that, yeah, it's a craving, but you won't get to enlightenment until you learn how to come to the middle and gradually pursue it as a goal, objective, or interest. Yeah. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. Hello to everyone online. All right, I don't see any questions there. Okay, so now that we're starting to understand a little bit about what the teachings of the Buddha are, let's talk about what the teachings of the Buddha are not, because this is a way to help you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, right? Is to talk about what the teachings of the Buddha are not. The Buddha's teachings are not a collection of beliefs, doctrine, concepts, opinions, and views that will lead to some type of pleasant afterlife if you believe in these things, and unpleasant afterlife if you don't believe in these things. In fact, the teachings of the Buddha aren't even opinions and views, right? This is the truth. You can actually independently verify his teachings. So it's not a bunch of doctrine or rules or beliefs or opinions or concepts. And it's not even about an afterlife. That's not what the Buddha is teaching you about. He's not teaching you to believe a bunch of things and hope something good happens when you die. He's teaching you how to get to a wonderful life now, in this life, right? And you can see your mind's actually doing that as you're progressing closer and closer to enlightenment. You can see there's situations where you were once angry and frustrated and agitated or annoyed, and that same situation's happening, and you're not frustrated, you're not angry. You can see your mind's improving. You can see your relationships improving. So it's not about what's going to happen after you die. It's about getting to a wonderful life now, right? And gradually training your mind to experience that ideal life. Also, the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion, but it really comes down to how you think about religion. If you think about religion as like an organized collection of teachings where there's one person at the top that's telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing, or if you think about religion about rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this, or if you think about religion as rules and commandments that everyone must follow in order to create a peaceful world, the teachings of the Buddha aren't this. This isn't what the Buddha did. There's nobody at the top of Buddhism. There's no one person at the top that's telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. You are your own independent practitioner. You are on your own journey to enlightenment. A teacher, we're essentially like a tour guide. We're just pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand. It's you that's walking. Right? We're walking with you and helping you along, but it's you that's doing all the work. So there's not anybody telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. This is you cultivating wisdom as your own independent journey. You're not a follower. You're not a devotee or anything like that. You are your own independent practitioner, looking for wisdom and seeking that wisdom and having teachers like a tour guide to point out for you the things that you need to learn and understand. There are no rites and rituals and ceremonies, worship and prayer in the teachings of the Buddha. If you've been taught those things or if you've seen those things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those people have grossly misunderstood his teachings. Because remember, the ultimate goal in the teachings of the Buddha is to cultivate wisdom. That's what's going to antidote that ignorance. And there's no amount of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer that's going to help you to cultivate wisdom. So if I sat here sprinkling water on you, I haven't helped you at all. I haven't helped you to cultivate wisdom. Or if there's some ritual or ceremony that somebody is doing, they're not actually helping you at all because you need to cultivate wisdom. So if you see religion as rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer, that's not what the Buddha taught. And if you see those things in a Buddhist environment, which you will see because people aren't studying with his original teachings, you can just understand that those people have misunderstood his teachings. And the Buddha teaches you that when you encounter that kind of thing, that it would be wise for you to ignore it and consider that those people have misunderstood his teachings. Then the Buddha never taught rules and commandments. He's not giving you a list of rules. Nobody has ever gotten to enlightenment by following rules, right? You need to be able to understand the natural laws and now navigate the world through those natural laws. So if you think about religion in this way, the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion. He never said, I discovered a new religion, right? When he got to enlightenment, he said, I discovered a better way of life. That's what he said. And now he spent the rest of his life from the age of 35 to the age of 80, helping people to understand that better way of life and training their mind. That's what he did. He didn't talk about religion at all. His teachings are not punishments and rewards. Sometimes people grow up in those kinds of things where it's all about punishment and rewards. That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. It's also nothing mystical or magical or superstitious or auspicious. You can see in his original teachings. For those of you guys that were here this morning, you saw in his original words that there's nothing auspicious or superstitious in his teachings whatsoever. So it's not about all this mysticism and magic. Also, the teachings of the Buddha are not something to attempt to go out into the world and convince other people to do. This is a practice for you. And as you learn this wisdom, you might have the tendency to be really interested in going out and sharing it with other people. And we can talk about the best ways for you to be able to help other people through the wisdom that you've cultivated. But that's not the goal of his teachings. His teachings aren't about going out there and hitting a drum and holding picket signs and trying to scare people or fear people into learning his teachings. This is a path for you. This is inner growth and inner development, inner discovery within your own mind. It's not about going out in the world and convincing other people to do anything specific. Also, it's not these short, catchy phrases that will produce some kind of benefit in your life. If you spend any amount of time on social media, you might see these little memes that have like a little phrase and then it'll say the Buddha, right? And if you research these things, 99.99999% of the time, the Buddha never even said those things. Those are like modern quotes in the last 100 years or so. And somebody like slapped the name the Buddha on it to give it some credibility. The Buddha's discourses are very deep. They're actually quite long and they're very profound. They're very meaningful. He's teaching you about these natural laws. He doesn't have these little short, catchy phrases that is going to produce some kind of benefit in your life. Also, his teachings aren't stuck in a cultural past that denigrates or degrades any particular person or group of people. Sometimes you might hear people say, oh, the teachings of the Buddha degrade women. No, you won't ever see anywhere that the Buddha does that, or minorities or anything like this. You will never see the Buddha talking about that kind of stuff ever anywhere. For people who say that, they haven't looked at the true teachings of the Buddha. He teaches everybody is equal, and he teaches husbands how to respect wives. He teaches wives how to respect husbands. So he's teaching everybody that we're all equal and that we should have love and kindness and compassion for everybody, treating every individual as equal. He doesn't teach anybody to look down on any particular group of people. He doesn't teach you to have hatred or anger towards anyone whatsoever. So his teachings aren't based in a particular culture and stuck in a cultural past. His teachings actually cut through culture, because oftentimes culture is misinformed. That culture will tell you to do this particular thing. And if you do that thing among the people who understand your culture, they'll think it's just great. But if you go over here and you do that particular thing from your culture, these people might be like, oh, that's horrible. How could you ever do that? Right? So the Buddha's teachings aren't based in culture. It's based in the natural laws. And you can cut through this and be able to get to the point where you understand true reality. And now you can navigate the world peacefully, whether you're in one culture or another. It doesn't matter. When you travel around the world, if you're practicing the true teachings of the Buddha, you can function in any culture because you're not causing any harm, whether it's in the USA, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in Asia or anywhere in the world. You'll be able to be at ease because you're treating everybody polite, kind, friendly, respectful, but not based in culture, based in the natural laws. And you'll be able to have great experiences no matter where you go. So his teachings aren't stuck in a cultural past that degrades or denigrates any particular group of people. And if you hear people saying those kinds of things, they just haven't studied the original words of the Buddha. And they could now, if they'd like, to be able to get access to those things. So this is what the teachings of the Buddha are not. Do you guys have any questions on this? No questions? Okay, let me see if we have any online here. I don't see any online. Okay. So what I usually do at this point is take like a little break because we've been hanging out for about an hour and a half or so with our meditation and then talking about this. And then after we come back from our break, I'm going to share with you the Buddha's very first teaching. It's called the Four Noble Truths. This is where in 4 simple statements, you'll be able to understand the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward in a way that you can independently verify. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding why do you experience anger and frustration and sadness and all these other discontent feelings, because you'll never be able to eliminate them if you don't know what's causing them. So that's why he starts out with this very first teaching. So if you guys would like to take a break, maybe get to know each other, use the bathroom, get a snack, stretch your legs. It's now basically about 2:25. So why don't we take a break until 2:45, which will give us like a 20-minute break, and then I'll start off from there. Okay. So thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn, and I'll see you in about 20 minutes. Okay, so welcome back to everybody here, and welcome back to everyone online. We were just having a little discussion at break, and we're still continuing it. So, Boulder, if you would like to continue with your questions, go ahead, and then I'll jump into the Four Noble Truths.
Okay, well, so we're talking about things, many things about the original text from the Buddha, what's original, what comes later, and of course, like I'm trying to, when I have doubts in my learning now, I try to push them aside. Not that I'm trying to no, this is crap. There's no way I'm going to go with this. If I don't understand something, that's fine. If I disagree with it, I can go with it. But one thing I've always thought about, and a lot more now that I've sort of been interested in Buddhism more in the last year, is sort of this information. Like, wow, this is so old, and so much of it is modern. You see it in modern psychology and so forth, but the ideas and all this is so old. But then, when it comes to what did the Buddha actually say, and what did the people following him say, and what's real, what's not real, what's what. But it led me to one thing like history. Even my memory for yesterday is tainted already. And what's written, about things that happened during COVID or whatever are already a little bit twisted. History changes very quickly, the truth of things. But there was just a realization that I had, like listening to things. It is like when you look at the vocabulary, like the language that was being used, that's what amazes me. Like the Pali, that these are like 2,500 years ago, really deep, heavy thinkers, and that doesn't have to be written down anywhere. You just see it in the words that are used. That is like a photograph, the language of what people were thinking,
Yeah.
So, like there was this word virya, for example, which means so many things. Virya, it means like, what is it? There's so many words that it describes. Are you familiar with that word?
No.
Virya.
I don't teach in Pali.
No.
Because these words, it's no longer a spoken language.
Yeah.
And they mean one thing to one person, another thing to another person. Even the English language, people have different definitions for words. So it makes it very difficult if I were to use Pali language for people to understand the teachings, because they would first have to learn Pali, then they would have to learn what I'm teaching, then they would have to reflect on it and practice it to be able to actually get the results. So by teaching in a native language that people already understand, they can jump to implementing the teachings and actually get the results. So I don't teach Pali at all.
No, and I don't want to learn Pali, but it's just this idea though that people had, like, these really deep, complicated concepts.
This is
such a long time ago. I think it's
what
amazing.
your thought there connects to what you were asking before we went live. Is you were asking about multiple Buddhas and Buddhas prior to Gotama Buddha. When you understand the complexity, but yet the simplicity in the teachings of the Buddha, that there needed to be in humanity a certain ability to communicate, that it wasn't until about 2,500 years ago that we had that level of language to be able to communicate. 10,000, 20,000 years before the Buddha, we didn't have that level of communication. When we first came into humanity, we were kind of grunting and moaning. We didn't really have structured language or anything like that. So the idea of there being Buddhas before Gautama Buddha, you can see the evidence that it would be impossible, because unless there was some civilization, because the Earth's been here for 4.5 billion years, and we think that human beings have been here for about 200,000 years to 2 million years is kind of like the window, right? So unless there were human beings long before 2 million years ago, and we've lost record and lost the count of that, then it would be impossible for there to have been Buddhas before Gautama Buddha, because we didn't have enough language complexity to be able to describe the things that he's describing prior to him. So that's one of the evidences that you can see that there most likely weren't Buddhists before him. But he figured it out 2,500 years ago, and people just didn't learn it necessarily. Obviously during his lifetime, lots of people learned it. And then afterwards, lots of people learned it. But he talked about during his lifetime how his teachings would slowly degrade over time. And that's exactly what's happened. But now we're in this period of time where, we're kind of in that, misinformation, so much information. People talk about fake news and all this kind of stuff where, people have been through belief and they see that that doesn't really work. And we're in this time frame now where people would like to see the truth. Like, show me the truth. I'm not going to believe you. Show me how I can tell the truth here. And his teachings are really well suited for that. So this is a perfect time for his teachings to be restored into the world so that more and more people can gain the benefit of it. So what you're seeing is, what other people see too. And as you were talking there about doubt, when you have doubt, you can actually harness this and turn it into an inquisitive mind. Rather than allowing your doubt to erode your mind and turn away from the teachings, you can actually use that to harness this doubt and say, I don't know whether the teachings of the Buddha lead. This is not me speaking, but someone could say, I don't really know whether the teachings of the Buddha lead to enlightenment or not, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to investigate those teachings and find out. So instead of pushing away, you actually walk towards it. So when you have doubts, ask questions. That's what's going to help you to gain clarification and wisdom. That's going to help you to be able to then do that, where you don't have to just push it away or not being able to figure out how things are connected or things like this. Because at the core of all of this, his teachings are actually, in my opinion, quite simple and quite straightforward. That's what makes them so profound, is he took this human psychology and he boils it down to really simple things that the average person could understand. And that's what makes them so powerful and so potent. So I invite you that wherever you see doubts that you have in your own mind, ask questions, because that's what's going to help you to be able to overcome that, is by gaining clarity. And you can only do that through asking questions. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So welcome back to everybody once again. I'm going to share with you guys this very first teaching. This is where he would start out all of his first students. If you are a brand new student with the Buddha, he would start you out with the Four Noble Truths, because this is going to lay the foundation to be able to help you understand all of his other teachings. His core central teaching is something called the Eightfold Path. This is the path to enlightenment. If you are interested in getting to this peaceful and joyful mental state, you would need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards, inside out, right? This is just an image, but behind this is actually teachings to be able to help you understand each individual factor. And I'm going to be teaching this on Tuesday. If you guys would like to come to that course next week, Monday through Friday from 9 to 3, you're more than welcome to. But just know on Tuesday morning, I'm going to be teaching this. It takes me about 2.5 hours to go through and teach this entire teaching. But this is the path to enlightenment. And students will typically learn this multiple times, because you're not going to be able to learn it once and just, I got it. I understand it. You're going to need to learn it multiple times. So books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, but you would like to be able to learn through the original words of the Buddha. And that's what I provide in those books and all the other resources that I share. So you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. Because there's plenty of people who are sharing what they refer to as the Eightfold Path. But if it's not based in the original words of the Buddha, it's not going to actually work to produce enlightenment. So you would like to learn this through the original words of the Buddha and learn it inside and out, backwards and forwards, and even commit it to your memory. What we're going to do today is I'm going to teach you right view. This is the very first step on the Eightfold Path, the very first factor on your journey to enlightenment. And it's a foundation. That's why it's here at the bottom. It's a foundation that everything else is built on top of, right? So once you understand right view and establish right view, you can then understand the rest of the teachings of the Buddha. But without understanding right view, you wouldn't understand anything the Buddha has to share with you. So that's why he started new students with right view and helping you to understand what that is and deeply establishing that in your your mind. So I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths and what is right view. But before I do that, I need to first share with you something called the Three Universal Truths. These are like building blocks to be able to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. You would need to first understand these before you could understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to teach you these in a way that you can learn, examine, and investigate, intellectually understanding them. Then I'm going to show you how to reflect on these to independently verify whether they're true or false. And then I'm going to show you how to practice in order to integrate this stuff into your day-to-day life and actually experience the real results. So remember, you're not interested in believing anything that it is that I have to share with you. The Buddha teaches you that when you're learning his teachings, that you listen with eager ears. Essentially, you're actively listening, right? If you're just sitting back expecting the waves of the Buddha's teachings to roll over you and somehow you're going to get to enlightenment, this isn't the way it's going to work. You're going to need to actively be involved in your own learning and growth and development. So I'll show you how this works. So you're going to be able to cultivate wisdom here about the world. This first universal truth is called the universal truth of impermanence. And we refer to these as the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true, but that's why you need to know that they're true in order to be able to get to the wisdom. Okay. So this universal truth of impermanence is helping you to understand the way the world is. Not the way the world should be, but the way the world is. And what the Buddha is teaching you as a building block to understand the Four Noble Truths is that the way the world is it's impermanent. Things are constantly changing. That there's something called conditioned objects. These conditioned objects arise, they change, and then they fade away. This is called impermanence. They're temporary. The world around you is constantly changing. So anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind, it's all impermanent. It's constantly changing. Okay, so this is important understanding by the time we get to the Four Noble Truths for you to understand this. But you can't believe this for yourself. You need to independently verify it. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that here in a moment. So there's conditioned objects that arise, change, and fade away. But then there's something called unconditioned objects. An unconditioned object doesn't arise, doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. There's only two of those. There's the natural laws, right? I talked to you about the Buddha taught the natural laws of existence. These are unchanged. That's why his teachings are timeless. That whatever he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was then because he's just describing the natural laws. Now, people's memories of his teachings, they have changed, or the books and the resources that people use, those have changed, but the natural laws themselves haven't actually changed. So the natural laws are unconditioned objects. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. And then enlightenment itself. By the time you get to the enlightened mental state, you have unconditioned your mind. And now it's a permanent mental state. This mental state doesn't arise, it doesn't change, it doesn't fade away. The mind is just enlightened because you've purified it and you've removed the causes and conditions that are producing the discontent feelings, right? So these are the two things that are unconditioned, is the natural laws and enlightenment itself. It doesn't arise, doesn't change, it doesn't fade away. But everything in the world around you, every material object, it is impermanent. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. Okay, so now you don't believe that because that's intellectual understanding. You can intellectually understand what I just shared with you, but don't believe it. You now move it into reflection. And now with reflection, you start looking around the world to try to see if this is true or if this is false. Because if this is a universal truth, you would be able to independently verify it, right? So what I suggest you do is you start with something that you're familiar with, like this physical body. You're familiar with this body. You can ask yourself, is it permanent? Meaning it's always the same, it's never changed, or is it impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? So ask yourself, is this body permanent or impermanent? What would you say? It's impermanent, right? Ever since the egg and sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller, right? We get pimples and moles and wrinkles, we get gray hair, our hair starts to fall out, our teeth grow in and then they fall out and then more teeth grow in. That's impermanence. The body's constantly changing, right? What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. Or if your relationships are impermanent, impermanent, then that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life throughout your entire life. So would you say your relationships are permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? Constantly changing. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's going up and down and up and down, up and down. Some people's goes up, 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 up. Some people's goes down, 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 down. That's impermanence. That's change, right? What about the weather? Is that permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, constantly changing, right? So we could go on and on and on. And if you need to do this, do it, right? Because you need to independently verify this for yourself. When you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is impermanence. When you look around the floor of the temple and you see wood planks, some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are one color, some of them are another color, right? This is impermanence. You guys, when we started the class, you were sitting in a particular place, but now that's changed, right? You guys have moved to other places. That's impermanence. That's all that is, right? So there's things that are constantly changing around you all the time. So this is a building block that's going to help you understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. Then the second universal truth is called discontentedness. If you studied some of the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard them refer to this as suffering. I don't use this word, and I'll explain to you why, but let me first explain to you what the Buddha taught here, and then we'll circle back and I'll explain that to you. So in the original source teachings of the Pali Canon, the word here is dukkha. This word translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. This is where the Buddha describes the unenlightened mind and how it experiences conditioned feelings, that the mind experiences pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. The pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, very happy, very pleased to be able to experience that, right? Then there's painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Very painful to experience those feelings. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that into the painful category if you like. But something like shyness, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if somebody you didn't know came and sat really close to you in public transportation and your body was touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. You're kind of uncomfortable, dissatisfied in that situation, right? So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences: pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. And these are what's called conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you are now going to have a feeling. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you get really excited about that, that's a conditioned feeling. Based on the condition that there is a sun, now the mind experiences excitement. But then what happens is you might go take a shower and you come out and it's raining and now you're sad or you're frustrated. Because if your happiness was based on a condition and that condition is impermanent, then that means your happiness is impermanent too. Right? This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. If I have this much money in my bank account, I'm happy. But if I have this much, you're sad or frustrated. All that's happened here is change, which we'll talk about when we get to the Four Noble Truths. But here in this second universal truth, the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand that your mind experiences conditioned feelings in the unenlightened state. There's pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. An enlightened being doesn't experience conditioned feelings. They experience unconditioned mental states. Where an unenlightened being, they will wake up in the morning and see it's sunny and they will get excited and happy. And then when they take a shower and they come out and it's raining, they will be sad and frustrated. An enlightened being is beyond all of this. They're already happy before they ever woke up in the morning. And then when they see it's sunny, it's like, sweet, I'm going to go outside and go hiking today. This is going to be great. I'll go on a hiking trail, have some fun, get some exercise. I'll call my friends. This will be a great time. And now you go take a shower as an enlightened being and you come out and it's raining. It's like, it's raining. Oh, well, I guess I'll stay home and read a book, or maybe I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over. We'll have some dinner. Maybe cook some food for them, right? You can maintain your happiness. You can maintain your joy because your joy wasn't based on the sun. So that means your joy is not impermanent. It's not conditional, that you were already joyful before you ever saw the sun, right? So this is how an enlightened being minds function, that it's beyond the conditioned feelings of going up and down and up and down. That's what the unenlightened mind is doing, that it's only a matter of time before you become frustrated or annoyed about something, right? But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind doesn't do that anymore. You've trained it to no longer do that. So this is conditioned feelings. And you can independently verify this universal truth because you know that your mind's unenlightened, right? Is this what you experience? Are there any feelings that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? Either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant? If so, we can talk about it when we get to the question period, and I will help you. So here you can independently verify that this is what the unenlightened mind experiences, is these discontent feelings. Essentially, the Buddha is describing how the mind is shaken up. It's unsteady, it's unstable. If you've ever been so excited or happy that you tripped and fell, or you dropped something, you'll know that your mind is unstable and unsteady in that situation. Okay? So some people refer to this as suffering. You might have heard that in your journey on this path, right? That if you've learned from other places, they might say the Buddha taught to eliminate suffering, right? He's not teaching you to eliminate suffering, because suffering describes the painful feelings really well, right? And if that's all you understood, you would never actually be able to get to enlightenment, because the stress, the anxiety, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the anger, the frustration, yeah, that feels very painful. You might say you're suffering there. But if you went into work and your boss said, hey, I'm going to give you a $20,000 a year raise, and you got really excited about that, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Or if your mom called you up and said, hey, I heard you got a new house. I'm going to come over and I'd like to cook that dish that you always liked when you were a kid. We'll have that great meal that you always like. And you got so excited that mom was coming to see you. You probably wouldn't say you were suffering, right? Or if that person that came and sat next to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body and you experienced that displeasure, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering when that person's sitting next to you and your body's touching their body, right? So the word suffering explains the painful feelings really well, but it doesn't explain the pleasant feelings and the feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. So you'd only be understanding 33% of the teachings of the Buddha if you use the word suffering. You'd be missing 66% of his teachings. And how could you actually get to the goal of a teacher's teachings if you were missing 66% of his teachings? So you need to be able to get to the point where you understand what the Buddha is talking about is the shaken up mind, that he's not talking about suffering, he's talking about this discontent mind. You need to ultimately get to the point where you see the pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. It's very intuitive to understand that you're eliminating sadness, anger, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings like stress and anxiety. It's like, yeah, you'd like to get rid of that stuff. But the Buddha's also teaching you to eliminate conditional pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, and others. Because with conditional pleasant feelings, you can only be happy if those conditions are being met. So if my mom and dad are doing this, if my boss is doing this, if the weather is this, if my bank account is this, if I have this house and this car and have a boyfriend or girlfriend and this, that, and the other thing, then I will be happy. So that means your happiness shrinks because you're putting conditions that these things have to be true in order for me to be happy. And now this is why some people are old and grumpy, right? They go around with all these expectations and now they're not getting fulfilled and now their mind is not happy. So they shrink their ability to be happy because the idea of all those things being true is nearly impossible. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is get beyond this, where your mind is no longer forming conditional feelings, but instead you get to unconditional happiness. You get to unconditioned joy, where your mind can just be joyful and happy all the time, and it doesn't need to have any condition being met. If your bank account balance is here, sure, I'm joyful, but not because of the bank account balance, just inwardly joyful. And now when your bank account balance goes here, you're still joyful. But if you can only be joyful when your bank account balance is here, it's not going to be there permanently. So therefore, you can't experience permanent happiness. So you need to be able to see these conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem. And you'll understand this more when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be plenty happy. You'll be happier than you ever were when you were in the unenlightened state. But you need to be able to eliminate the mind's forming of conditioned feelings, that I can only be happy if this thing occurs. I can only be happy if there's 100 people here learning from me. That's it. If there's 3 people here, I can't be happy, right? That's the conditioned feelings. And now your happiness shrinks. But if you have no conditions in your mind, you can be happy if there's 100 people or there's 1 person. You can maintain your happiness, right? Because there's not going to always be 100 people here. And there's not going to always be 1 person here either. It's going to be constantly changing. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get beyond all of this, where the mind's no longer forming conditioned feelings. So he's teaching you to eliminate discontentedness. And you need to be able to see that in order to be able to truly accomplish the goals that he's sharing with you. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. I'll teach you what this is, because this is a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. Remember earlier I mentioned to you about the 10 fetters. There's 10 individual pollutions in the mind. Well, this is actually the solution to one of the pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. I'll tell you what this pollution is first, and then I'll talk about this universal truth so that you can understand the solution, because you need to understand the problem first. So personal existence view, what this pollution is where the mind has confusion or misunderstanding or a lack of wisdom. It has this delusion or misunderstanding. It actually thinks that this body is you, or it thinks that this mind is you. So the mind clings to this self-image and how this body looks, and it clings to a self-identity in your mind. Now it wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when you're being perceived that way, you're happy and excited. You're getting pleasant feelings. But when you're not being perceived that way, you'll have painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So here's an example. If you've ever been in a social situation where you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed, this was your personal existence view that caused that. The mind was clinging to this body, wanting it to look a certain way permanently. And now when you were in front of other people and you didn't look that way, you were embarrassed. The mind experienced this embarrassment because the mind was clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are, clinging to this self-image. If you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a mole or a wrinkle, or you saw you were losing your hair, or your hair turned gray or something like this, and you were shaken up by this was your personal existence view. If you've ever stood in front of your closet and you thought, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? I know what shirt I'm going to wear. I want that shirt. And you put on that shirt and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, I don't want to look that way. And you put on another shirt. No, that's not how I want to look. And you put on there. Okay, now I look good. Now I can go outside, right? I feel good now. This is your personal existence view, clinging to this body, wanting to appear to others in a certain way, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. If you were like me when I was a teenager, I used to get out the gel and the mousse, and I used to run it through my hair, run it through, trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I'd go to school. And sometimes I did this for so long, I would miss the school bus on the way to school, right? This was my personal existence view. I wanted to be perceived by others in a certain way, and I couldn't go outside until every little hair was in the right spot, right? So this is the mind clinging to a self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and can only feel happy when that's occurring. And when you're not being perceived that way, you feel these painful feelings. Then there's the self-identity in the mind. where the mind's clinging to I am, right? Based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or maybe a job or occupation. Maybe I am German or I am Icelandic, right? I'm not sure where you're from, ma'am. Russia. I am Russian, right? Or I am American, or I am Chinese, or I am Japanese. Any of this I am about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, any number of things that the mind can cling to. Well, if you have that in your mind, you're clinging to this identity. Let's just say the mind is clinging to the role of I am a boyfriend, or I am a girlfriend, or I am a husband, or I am a wife, right? And now you're in a relationship and you feel pretty comfortable because I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife. But then when you guys break up, you don't feel comfortable. The mind doesn't feel comfortable with I am single because it doesn't identify that way. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind thought that was the way to actually solve the problem, where in reality, it's the personal existence view that's causing that. The mind's clinging to this role of who you think you are. And now, as long as that's intact, you feel a certain level of comfort. But now when you're not that anymore, your mind doesn't feel comfortable with that. Or maybe you had a certain job or occupation. Maybe I am a police officer. And now when you're doing that job, you feel great. But 10 years, 20 years down the road, you retire. Or maybe you get injured and you can't do the job anymore. Or maybe you get fired or laid off. And now you're driving this taxi. And your mind's identifying with, I am a police officer. And now you're disgruntled and irritated and annoyed the whole time because your mind is identifying as something that you're not actually doing, right? Or any number of different things. Let's just say you have the identity of I am German, or I am Icelandic, or I am Russian, or I am American. And now you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody says, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle and friendly. I've never heard this before, but let's just say that someone might say that, right? If you identify that way, you're like, wow, they're talking about me. And you get all these pleasant feelings, right? But now 2 tables over, because of impermanence, someone's going to say, all American people are blah, 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 and talk really nasty and negative about those types of people. And now if you identify as that's who you are as a person, you'll be angry and frustrated, irritated in this situation. So what the Buddha teaches you to solve all of this is that there is no self, that this body nor this mind is you. It's not who you are. But the problem is, with this personal existence view, that the mind will cling to this and think that this is you. And now you'll want this to be permanent, when in reality, it's constantly changing. So you need to get to the point where you realize non-self, that you realize that this body is not you and this mind is not you. But the mind is confused in these situations, and it lacks the wisdom to be able to actually practice where it doesn't identify as this body being who you are or this mind being as who you are, right? So that you need to be able to get to the point where you realize non-self. Sometimes people have personal existence view so badly that they will go to their friends and family in their home country and they will say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find myself. I need to go find my true self. You know what? I'm going to go to Thailand and I'm going to go try to find myself. And they might come to a place like Thailand to find themselves. Well, they're not going to find their self here because it doesn't exist. They might find a new job, new hobbies, new activities, new friends. They might find these kinds of things, and they might cling to these things. And they go back to their home country and they say, wow, I found myself. I know who I am again. But now, 5 years later, when all that stuff changes, I don't know who I am anymore, right? Because all that stuff has changed. So as long as you cling to any of these things as who you think you are, when it all changes, you'll have difficulties in those situations. I had somebody contact me one time after COVID. They're a student who's been learning with me for several years. And he said, David, I need your help. I said, really? What's going on? because I do personal guidance with students too. I said, what's happening? They said, well, ever since COVID, I've been having all these difficulties. This person lives in the USA. They said, before COVID, I used to go around and I would order things. And he says, I'm a great tipper. I tip everywhere I go. I'm such a great tipper. And he says, I just pay in cash and no big deal. And I tip people when I think I should tip them. And when I don't need to tip people, I feel like I don't tip them. Like when I go get coffee, I tend to not tip those people. But now, after COVID, I can't pay with cash anymore. So they turn around this computer screen and it says, tip 20%, 25%, 30%. And I feel like I don't need to tip because they just took my order. It was a 30-second order and they gave me a cup of coffee. And now I move on to my day. Why should I have to tip them? Right? But now I feel so conflicted because I'm in this situation and I don't tip. And he's like, I'm such a great tipper. I'm such a great tipper. And I feel so conflicted in this situation. I don't understand why. And I said, that's your personal existence view. Your mind's clinging to the idea that I am a great tipper. And when you tip, you feel great and you feel comfortable. But when you're not tipping, you feel uncomfortable, right? And you got to get comfortable with understanding you're not going to always tip. That's just impermanence. That's all that is, right? So your mind can cling to any number of things. Yes, your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation, or your nationality, but there's other things your mind can cling to as who you think you are as a person, related to your self-image or your self-identity, even your decisions. Sometimes people in the past have used drugs and alcohol, and they think, I am an alcoholic. Right? And they might think that way. They might feel guilty about that and shameful about that. You're not an alcoholic. That's not an identity that you need to carry around with you. Just understand that in the past, you did make decisions to use drugs and alcohol, but now you're no longer making those decisions, right? And even if you were, it still doesn't mean that that's who you are as a person, right? It's just that these choices and decisions that doesn't define who you are as a person, right? But sometimes people are taught this, that I am an alcoholic. And of course, this is something that people use in order to help you to know that never go back and use drugs and alcohol, right? It's unwise to ever go back and use drugs and alcohol. But your mind doesn't need to identify as that's who you are as a person. You can just understand that, sure, I made those decisions in the past, but that doesn't define me today, who I am as a person. Right? So the Buddha helps you with that by saying there is no self. Don't cling to any of these things as who you are as a person. Right? So now that was the intellectual learning part of it. Let's move into reflection. Just like we did with the other two, you can start reflecting to be able to independently verify, is this true or is this false? Right? Well, ask yourself, how did you view yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and now? Has it been exactly the same through all those phases of your life, or has it been constantly changing? It's been changing, right? There you can see there is no self. It's constantly changing. Here's another way. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? No. You're not less of a person, right? So intellectually, you understand this body is not you, because otherwise you would answer that question differently. But in the heat of the moment, when you have personal existence view, your mind gets confused, because if someone says something positive about this body, you'll get really happy about that. But if they say something negative, you'll get maybe grumpy or irritable or frustrated about that, right? That's the confusion that the mind has with its personal existence view. It doesn't understand this body is not you. Intellectually, you understand it, but you're not practicing it yet, where your mind has let go of that. And here's a third way. Point to yourself. Where are you? Okay, Boulder's pointing there. That's a common place people point, right? Some people will point here. Some people point here. Well, if you're pointing at something and you say, I am here, you need to look at what you're pointing to. What you're pointing to is a shirt. That's literally what you're pointing to, right? And you ask yourself, is that who you are? Is that that shirt that you're wearing? Is that you? Like if we took off our shirt and we held it up and pointed to it, is that you? Is that who you are? That shirt that you've got? That's not you, right? Okay. So we throw that away. Where are you? Someone might point again. right? Well, what are you pointing to? You're pointing to skin at this point, right? Because the shirt's gone, right? You're pointing to skin. Ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin that you've got there? If we took off your skin and we held it up and we pointed to it, is that you? Is that who you are? No, that's not you, right? So we throw that away. Where are you? And someone might point again. Well, you've got ribs, you've got muscle tissue, you've got organs, you've got fluid. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you. But the mind's confusion is it will cling to this, thinking that this is you. The mind's lack of wisdom, it'll cling to this, thinking that this is you. So the Buddha teaches you to let all this go and not thinking of any of this as who you are, because you can't be permanently peaceful and joyful as long as you cling to any of these things as who you are. Because in some cases, you're going to get what you want, and in some cases, you're not. Right? So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have about any of the three universal truths. Remember, you guys can use the mics here, or those of you online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So is there any questions that you guys have? Okay, it looks like we have a question coming in on Zoom. Let's see. Get my mouse here. Okay, that's from Frank. Hello, Frank. All right, so the question here is, one way to reconcile the translation of dukkha as suffering is to understand it as being subject to suffering, being in the domain of Mara rather than suffering itself. I don't agree with that, but I understand what you're saying. Here's your question. Question is, how should we reflect and practice to internalize the danger of craving central desire? Well, if you understand that all craving, desire, attachment is going to lead to discontentedness, because if you allow your mind, for example, to get those pleasant feelings, this is why it's important to think of it as discontentedness and not suffering. If you allow your mind to get those pleasant feelings that are conditional, the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. So, for example, if you got a brand new job, and you got so happy and excited about this, and you just couldn't wait to get in there on your first day of work. It was the perfect company, the perfect salary, the perfect coworkers, amazing office that you're going to be working at, and you got so excited about it. And now when you're working in that job for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you feel so great about all the work that you're doing. You're so excited. Well, in 5 years, when the company goes out of business or you get laid off, you're going to be angry. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be sad, right? So if you allow your mind to get conditional pleasant feelings, then the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. The example with mom, if you get really excited that mom's coming to visit you on Friday because you got a new condo or a new house and she's going to make that favorite meal for you, right? You're so excited mom's going to come. Well, when she calls you on Thursday night and says, hey, I've had a change of plans. Sorry, I can't come. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be sad, right? So if you allow the mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, then you're going to get the painful ones. They're waiting for you right around the corner, because that condition that you're experiencing the pleasantness about, it's not permanent. And the mind's going to change, and now it's going to move to the painful feelings. So this is why it's so important, Frank, to not think of this as suffering, because then you're only focused on the painful feelings and you're just working to eliminate those. But you can't eliminate the painful feelings if you don't eliminate the conditional pleasant feelings. If you keep allowing your mind to get conditional pleasant feelings, then you can't move beyond that to be able to get to the unconditioned happiness and the unconditioned joy, where if mom comes, great, we're going to have a good time, mom. This is going to be great. It'll be wonderful to see you. And now she calls you up on Thursday and says, hey, I can't come. So sorry. Hey, no worries, mom. I understand. Things change. Whenever you're able to come, it'd be great to see you. Feel free to come whenever you like. You can maintain your happiness. You can maintain your joy. Right? But if you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings based on the condition that mom comes, I will be happy. Mom's not going to always come. She's going to change her mind sometimes, right? Or she's going to have something else come up. So that means you're limiting your ability to be happy because the mind's experiencing conditional happiness. So you need to move beyond this misunderstanding of the word suffering, because if you keep thinking of it in this way, you'll tend to only focus on the painful feelings, not the pleasant ones, and not the neither painful nor pleasant feelings either. So you need to be able to reflect on this and be able to see all three conditioned feelings are part of the problem. And the Buddha's guiding you to eliminate all of that so that you can get to the unconditioned happiness and the unconditioned joy where you can just always be happy no matter what's happening. Okay. Let me see if we have any other questions here. Okay. I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to move on to one other thing here before we talk about the Four Noble Truths. So this is called craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectation, holding, grasping, clinging. You need to be able to understand this in order to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. This is how the mind is longing, yearning for something. It's chasing after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. It's like an unquenchable thirst that the mind has where it chases and chases and chases and chases. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you were like, oh, I just got to get those shoes. Oh my gosh, they're going to look so good on my feet. I can't wait to wear them. They're going to be so comfortable. Oh, I just can't wait to get those shoes. That's the craving, desire, attachment, not the shoes themselves, not the object, but the way that the mind is longing, yearning for the object, right? Or maybe it was a video game or a piece of jewelry or a new mobile phone or something like this. The mind can long and yearn for literally anything. I gave you an example earlier with the water because you asked that question about craving for enlightenment itself, right? So the mind can crave anything. It's not the object itself that is the craving. It's the mind longing, yearning for the object. So you guys know what I'm talking about here? Craving, desire, attachment. Have you ever been in the mall, felt your mind longing, yearning, thinking that something external was going to provide lasting satisfaction, so you chased it and chased it and chased it? Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? You experienced this. Okay, perfect. So now let's talk about the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can really have a breakthrough to understanding what's causing these feelings so that then you can actually eliminate them. The first Noble Truth is explaining the problem here, that everyone in the unenlightened state will experience discontentedness. This is the shaking up of the mind, the instability of the mind, the way the mind goes up and down and up and down. When the mind's shaken up like that with discontent feelings, you can't make wise decisions and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you, right? So this is the problem that every unenlightened being is experiencing, is that the mind is discontent. It's only a matter of time in the unenlightened state that you're going to experience discontentedness. Like right now, you might just be kind of peaceful and joyful, just kind of sitting here listening to someone talk. But if you go outside and something happens, there's some certain thing that can trigger what's going on in your own mind where you can be angry or frustrated, irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. It's only a matter of time before that occurs. That's the problem that the unenlightened mind experiences, the unenlightened being. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. Discontentedness is caused by cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. Okay, I'm going to say that a few times. I'm going to give you some examples to help you understand this. Discontentedness, the condition of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, is caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of its affection. It's craving permanence while it lives in an impermanent world. So the mind will chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. And if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. Happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. It's craving permanence. So here's some examples for you. Think back to maybe a relationship that you got together with a brand new boyfriend or brand new girlfriend. When you guys first got together, you're probably experiencing all kinds of happiness and excitement. Wow, there's this new person in my life. someone showing me affection, someone calling and checking in on me, somebody that I can go to the movies with. Maybe they're inviting me to dinner. Maybe you're going to the park, having great conversations. Maybe you're even having intimate contact. Maybe you're having sex and you're getting all these pleasant feelings. But then over time, things change and now you guys break up. And when you break up, the mind is angry or frustrated. You might feel lonely or bored. You might start missing this person. It's not your love that's causing this. This is the mind craving permanence and holding on, wanting this relationship to be permanent. This relationship was always impermanent from the very beginning, but the mind didn't understand that. It didn't have that wisdom. There was a certain lack of wisdom that the mind had. So it was craving permanence. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, more likely than not, one of you would have died first, right? And now the mind craving permanence, like at the death of an individual, you can grieve and have sorrow and sadness. Again, this isn't your love. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. What's causing the grief and sadness at the time of death, like grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brothers and sisters are dying, is the mind's craving permanence. And if the mind gets what it wants, it's happy, it's excited. But if the mind's not getting what it wants, it experiences painful feelings. So if grandma and grandpa are alive, you're getting what you want, you're happy. But when they die, the mind is angry or frustrated or sad or grieving or some other feeling. You're not a bad person that your mind's doing this. It's just what the unenlightened mind does, that it craves permanence. Because grandma and grandpa were born, they have to die. Just like all of us, we are all impermanent, but the mind craves permanence in the unenlightened state because it doesn't have the wisdom of the universal truth of impermanence. You can see this if you've ever been to a wedding. If you or somebody close to you were crying during the wedding, this is the mind holding on and craving permanence. Here goes brother or sister off into the world with a partner, and mom and dad, grandparents, brothers and sisters can be crying and crying and crying. Well, if you have love for this person, which I'm sure they do, it's a genuine interest in seeing this being be well. If they're going off into the world with another person, hey, that's wonderful, great. You know, you're building up your life and you have more relationships. But that's not what the mind does. The mind craves permanence. And this person going off into the world with someone else, mom and dad, brothers and sisters, and grandma and grandpa are like, that's my son, that's my brother, that's my sister. They're taking them away from me. They are not permanent in my life. And the mind really struggles with this, right? You can see this if you've ever remember back to when you got dropped off at school, like at university or at kindergarten or preschool or something like this, or if you've ever dropped kids off before, they're crying and crying and crying. They're so upset. Here they are, 3 years old, 5 years old, going off into the world without mom and dad. And boy, are they upset. They're crying and crying, right? Even mom and dad might be crying too, right? Because here, everybody thought that this was permanent, right? The child thought mom and dad were permanent, and they're going off into the world without mom and dad. Well, if mom and dad are crying there, and it's from love, wouldn't you be pleased that your child's going off to school? Because now they're getting an education, right? And you can see that it's not the love that's causing the sadness and the grief. It's the craving for permanence, or the mind's holding on, wanting this being to be permanent, where that's not the case. We are impermanent in each other's life, right? Here's another example that doesn't involve relationships. Let's just say you bought a brand new car and you were so happy and excited about this brand new car, and you drove it off the parking lot and everyone's waving at you like, hey, look at her, she's so successful. Hey, look at him, he looks so great. Look at that car, wow. And you're so proud driving your new car. You park it at a store. You go inside to buy something and you come outside and you've got a scratch on your car. Oh my gosh, you might be crushed, so frustrated, so angry, right? It's not the scratch that's causing that frustration and that anger. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing it. What's causing it is the mind's craving permanence. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But the fact is that this car is impermanent. It's only a matter of time before it gets a scratch, or the paint fades, or the tires need to be changed, or the upholstery gets ripped and torn, or something of this nature, right? If your mind craves this car to be permanently beautiful, when you see the impermanence of the car, you'll be frustrated and angry, right? This is the mind causing those feelings itself. That's what I'm teaching you, is that your mind is causing these feelings itself. Because the mind in the unenlightened state will firmly believe that these feelings are being caused by something external. There's people in jail right now for having murdered that person that scratched their car, right? Because they were so angry and so frustrated. They're spending the rest of their life in jail because they just didn't understand impermanence and they were craving permanence. Because you could also come out and see that scratch on the car and be like, the car's scratched. Did someone leave a note? No note. Okay, well, I wonder if there's CCTV cameras. Maybe I can talk to the security guards and see who scratched my car. You know what? I've got insurance. I can probably go get it fixed. No big deal, right? You could have done that, but not if there's craving in your mind. You'll be frustrated and angry. You'll see red, right? Because you're so angry and frustrated about your car being scratched. So the Buddha is teaching you how to move beyond these feelings. Because when you have that anger and frustration rising up in your mind and you don't understand the second noble truth and you haven't independently verified it, you'll firmly believe that it's something external that's causing these feelings. And that's where you'll push people away or you'll push the situation away. This is called aversion, where you'll firmly believe that it's this person that's causing your feelings and you'll try to push them away. And then you can see that doesn't solve the problem, because when you've done that, you still get angry. You still get frustrated. Or the second thing that the mind will do when it doesn't understand the second noble truth is it'll be bitter and harsh and hostile to someone through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things your way. It's like, "Rrr." And now if the person gets scared and they start doing things your way, now you might feel like, I got what I wanted. I got my cravings fulfilled. But really, you just damaged your relationship. That's what you did. Because in a lot of cases, those people are going to leave out of your life. Or the third thing you might do is put your expectations on people and try to control people and pressure them and force them into doing things your way, right? So now in this situation, the mind cannot be content. It cannot be peaceful all the time. It can't have harmonious relationships, because it's only a matter of time before somebody does things differently than you. Because of impermanence, not everyone's going to do things your way. So you can't pressure 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. Because what the mind's doing here is trying to get its cravings fulfilled. It thinks if I can just get things my way, everything will be perfect. So this is the second noble truth, helping you to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings because you're craving permanence. But remember, this is just the intellectual part of it. You need to move it into reflection to independently verify it. And here's how I suggest you do that. Think about a recent time when you were angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. Ask yourself, what were you craving? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, your mind was angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. You should be able to look at this yourself and figure this out. But if you can, let me know and I will help you. Because I've had plenty of students over the years ask me different questions. They just can't imagine that their mind is causing this themselves. I'll give you one example of this. One time a student contacted me and they said, David, I know that you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I've got to tell you this situation. I just can't see how my mind is causing this. And I was like, sure, what happened? They're like, well, I went to work this morning. My house looked beautiful. I went to work and I came home about 8 hours later, 10 hours later, and my house was a wreck. My wife had this craft project all over the house. And I walked in and I got frustrated. How did my mind cause this frustration? I wasn't even there. My wife's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? And I was like, no, she didn't cause you to be frustrated. It was your own mind. You were craving permanence. You had the expectation that your house was going to look exactly the same when you came home as it did when you went to work. And all that's happened is change. It's just impermanence. That's all that it is. Your house can't look that way permanently. It's not possible. But if you have this craving for permanence, when you come home, you're going to cause your mind to be frustrated rather than just realize this is impermanence. And just like your wife has this craft project all over the house, she's going to eventually put it away, right? Or maybe you'll put it away too, right? But if you crave permanence, your mind's going to get frustrated or agitated in that situation. So the second noble truth is helping you to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But you need to be able to penetrate into this and see it for yourself, so that now going forward in life, you don't blame other people for the feelings that you're having and the experiences that you're having, because that's what the unenlightened mind will do, is it will blame other people for the feelings that you're having. Instead, the way you practice this is you look inward and you try to figure out, what is it that my mind is longing, yearning for here? Because if you can figure that out, you can actually eliminate your discontentedness. That's what the third noble truth is explaining to you here, that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate this cause, you'll eliminate the effect. If you can understand up here with the second noble truth that the cause of these discontent feelings is craving, desire, attachment, then you can understand that the way to eliminate that is to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. If you eliminate the mind holding on, craving permanence, you can eliminate the discontentedness. And you can verify this true too. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. When you guys broke up and you were angry and sad and frustrated, your mind was experiencing that for a period of time. But at some point you let go. And when you let go, that's where you regained your peace and your joy. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your joy and your peace came back, right? But your mind doesn't know how to do that in the unenlightened state. It's craving permanence. It's holding on very tightly to all these different things like relationships and material possessions and money and all these other things. So the Buddha gives you in the fourth noble truth the complete perfect plan of how to transform your mind, where it no longer has craving, desire, attachment, where you're not longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of your affection. The unenlightened mind can see this craving, desire, attachment pretty closely. It can usually see how it does that. And the mind thinks that, well, if I'm not chasing after things, then wouldn't I be all the way over here where I'm dull and lethargic and lazy and unmotivated and complacent? Well, you might be, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. The Buddha is teaching you to come to the middle, where you can pursue things with ambition and enthusiasm and motivation through wise decision making, that you can work towards a goal, objective, or interest, not chasing it and basing your feelings on whether you have it or not, and also not being over here where you're dull and lethargic and lazy, but instead you come to the middle and you gradually pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to teach you how to do that. That's the core central teaching of the Buddha. And it starts with right view. What right view is understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. Wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. If you continue to blame other people for what you're experiencing, you'll keep pushing people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, and you'll put your expectations on them, trying to control them and force them to do things your way. And you'll never solve your problems here. You'll continue to be angry and stressed and having anxiety and guilt, shame, and fear and stress and all these things the rest of your life. But when you can get to right view, which is understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and you can actually eliminate it, and there's actually a plan and a path to be able to do that, now you can actually fix it. That's why this is the first teaching that the Buddha shared. It's right view. This is the foundation. Everything is built upon this, where you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because why would you ever do anything to improve your life if it was everybody else causing these feelings? Aren't they the ones who should be here learning, right? You're already perfect. Right? That's what the ego might think in the unenlightened state is, I'm perfect. Everybody else is the problem, right? Well, if that's the case, everybody else should be here. You should be at home relaxing, and we just need to teach everyone to do things your way, right? But that's impossible. It's not going to happen that way. So the Buddha starts you off with understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And by now understanding that, then the rest of the path is geared towards helping you to train your mind to now be able to navigate the world peacefully and joyfully, understanding the world is impermanent and constantly changing. So right view is to be able to look inward and be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, no longer blaming other people and looking at the world through this new perspective, and now being able to be introspective, uncover your cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, yearning, and training your mind to let that go. But again, your mind doesn't know how to let go because it hasn't been trained to do that. And that's where all these other factors come in, and they're going to teach you and guide you how to do that. So I'm going to stop here because this is everything that I have to share with you guys on this particular topic, and see if you guys have questions. Is there anything you guys would like to ask about the Four Noble Truths or anything that I've been talking about here? Remember, you guys can use the mics, and then online you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand electronically in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. No questions? You have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So discontentedness, I understand that, and not suffering, when I realize that, or unsatisfactoriness. I've seen this worded in different ways, but if I'm asked, sort of, it's such a core, thing to understand, Four Noble Truths. And also I've seen it's worded differently, what's what, and the reason, why can't I just list the Four Noble Truths? I should be able to do that by now. Maybe it's because I'm seeing them there, it's like that, there, it's like that. But I often especially confuse the second and the third, and I think, well, why isn't just the three Noble Truths? Like, we could say, definitely the first stands on its own. And then there is a cause, and the cause is craving, desire, attachment. But, by saying the cause, aren't you already saying, well, if you take away the cause, then that's the cause? It's sort of implicit that that elimination of discontentness is the way out. Or if you could say there's a way to end discontentedness, and the way is through the Eightfold Path or something. Do you understand what I'm saying?
The way that yes, I do. The way that a Buddha teaches is they're very clear, they're very concise, and they're very precise. They don't leave anything to interpretation. So by him breaking it out into these four simple statements that very clearly explain the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of the problem, and then the complete plan to eliminate the problem, you can just see it very clearly what exactly is. Whereas if he mushes a bunch of stuff together, then it's not so clear anymore. So a Buddha teaches very clear, concise, and precise, so you don't need to interpret his words, you don't need to figure this out. And you've seen it represented in other ways because of impermanence. That impermanence affects even the teachings of the Buddha. And that's why you're not interested in believing his teachings. You need to be able to cut through that impermanence by independently verifying it yourself. So each one of these three statements that I have here, and the way that I represent the words of the Buddha for this particular teaching, you can independently verify every single one of these, and you can see the truth for yourself. And then the original words of the Buddha on the Four Noble Truths, you can see it in the book. I have it in the volume 1, chapter 4, and I have it in other places in the book series too. His Four Noble Truths, it's quite a bit more detailed than this, because he talks about the 5 aggregates in the Four Noble Truths. And I think the 5 aggregates was something that people were well aware of during his lifetime, but you guys don't know what the 5 aggregates are. You have no idea what that is. So in order to understand the way that the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, you would need to first understand the 5 aggregates. So I do teach the original words of the Buddha on the Four Noble Truths, that by the time you get to volume 2, I use his Four Noble Truths and break it down for you, because you need to understand it the way he taught it as well. But this will help you get started, and it'll help you really get on the path to really penetrating in what is the true problem, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, in the path forward, so that you can have this breakthrough to being able to finally see once and for all what's causing these feelings, so that you don't continue to walk around the world believing that it's other people who are causing these feelings. Because as long as you do that, you'll never be able to see the truth and actually fix the problem. So his teachings are laid out exactly the way they need to be taught, but you might not see the understanding of that, because that's one of the things you asked during your other questions. You had mentioned that when you disagree with the teachings, you just move on from that, right? it's important to understand that when you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, it's not about whether you agree with his teachings or you disagree with his teachings, because the Buddha had a certain amount of wisdom that led to his enlightenment. And an individual who's unenlightened, not that people are higher or lower than each other, but just the wisdom. Someone who's unenlightened has less wisdom than that. And they don't see the same things that a Buddha sees. So of course, this unenlightened being disagrees with what the Buddha is saying because they don't have the same wisdom. But your goal isn't to either agree or disagree with his teachings and then turn away from his teachings if you disagree. The goal, if you're interested in getting to enlightenment, is say, I don't see things in the same way as the Buddha is describing them. Help me to independently verify this so that I can now cultivate the same wisdom as this guy. Because if this guy is completely peaceful and joyful, and the way that he's thinking about the world led to that, let me figure out how to get to that understanding. So of course, I'm not going to, an unenlightened being isn't going to understand the teachings of the Buddha 100%. So your goal is not to either disagree or agree. It is help me to understand how I can independently verify that and see that wisdom and see that truth. And now you can be guided to be able to see that. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions here. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. All right. So here's what I'm going to do is share this last little piece with you of what the teachings of the Buddha are, right? Because that's what I started out with, is helping you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are. And I'm going to come back to this, which is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what the teachings of the Buddha are. And that's why he starts with helping you understand what's truly hurting you. What's truly hurting you is inside your own mind. The beauty in these teachings is you don't need to go out into the world and teach 8 billion people to do things your way. You only need to train one person. You only need to train one mind, because you can't train 8 billion people. It's not possible. There's only one person that you need to train. Do you know who that is? Who's the one person that you need to train? Is your own mind. Your job just got enormously less difficult, right? But you're going to find it even challenging to train just that one mind. So if you can't change this mind, how could you ever change other people's minds? The teachings of the Buddha aren't about going out in the world and changing other people. It's about changing your own mind. And you'll find that to be quite challenging, right? So this is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. So if you're done with the anger, you're done with the sadness, you're tired of the broken relationships, you're tired of the grief and the sorrow and the misery, that's where the teachings of the Buddha come in. It's here to help you to get beyond that so you can experience the peace, the joy, the cheerfulness, the brightness, the uplifted mind, right? But you need to understand what is hurting you, which is your own mind. It's the pollutions in the mind. And then the Buddha, he purified his mind of those pollutions, and then he shared the tools and techniques of how he actually did it. Right? So that's what the teachings of the Buddha are, is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. So in terms of getting continuous support on this path, is that if you'd like to continue to learn more, there's all these different options that you could learn more. There's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, quizzes. I share all of this stuff with you at no cost, and you can get access to it from our website. There's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. And again, it's available for you at no cost. You can learn in person here in Chiang Mai, but you can also learn online too, because I live stream all of our classes. And I also travel around the world and I teach at different places. So as I travel around, you can learn in any of those places. And it's always available at no cost. There's never a time where there's a fee for anywhere that I teach. So you're always welcome to come and learn and grow as much as you like. Then there's ongoing programs that are in person and online as well. The group learning program is a program that we do on Sundays and Wednesdays, where I go in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's the first book of the book series, where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter by chapter, and it's a 7-month program. And now we're in chapter 18, and you can really join this program at any time. We're going to restart it at the beginning of January, but you can really start it at any point, and you can gradually learn. Some people go through this program multiple times, and this is going to help you to be able to develop a foundation. Then there's the Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English Study Group. That's volumes 2 through 13, where each Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I'm gradually guiding people through that to be able to kind of fill in the framework. All the other programs, they kind of build this framework and a foundation, where the Pali Canon and English Study Group is filling in that framework to be able to help you more fully understand based in the original words of the Buddha, as is everything else that we share. So these are some learning opportunities for you. And next week, as you guys heard me share, on Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., I'm going to be sharing the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course, which is a very good start to really get an in-depth understanding of the path. Then, as you're learning in all of these different methods and modes, you're going to need personal guidance, right? You're going to need to sit down and talk with somebody, because it's one thing learning in a class, but it's a whole other thing relating it to your day-to-day life, right? So if you'd like to sit down and talk, if we're in the same town, you can just message me and we can talk and organize a date and time to sit down and chat. Or if you're online, you can just go to our website and schedule an appointment, and then we'll meet in Zoom, and then we'll talk one-on-one, and you can do that as much as you like. You can get personal guidance through talking one-on-one like that. That is the way that I can help you and really relate the teachings to your specific challenges. I'll never tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Those are decisions for you to make. But when you share your information with me about what you're experiencing, I'll share with you the teachings of the Buddha and how you might consider to approach this. But then it's your decision of whatever you choose. So you can get help in 4 different ways. You can ask questions in a live class. You can post in our Facebook group, which that's next here. And that's where I'll answer your questions. There's no one else who will answer your questions. Other students might ask other questions, but they won't actually answer your questions. It's only me who's answering your questions. You can schedule personal guidance, or you can send me a private message. If you have Facebook or YouTube or Facebook or WhatsApp or Line or WeChat or email or any of these other ways, you can just send me a message through any of those kinds of things. So you can ask questions in class, you can post in the Facebook group, you can send a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance. And those are all the ways that you can get help, because it's your own personal journey to enlightenment. I'm providing you all these resources and the ability to learn at no cost, but then it's your dedication and your determination that's going to help you to be able to make progress on that path. And I'm just like a tour guide, pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and be able to understand, to be able to experience this mental state of enlightenment. So do you guys have any remaining questions you would like to ask? Anything you'd like to talk about? No? Let me see if we have anything online here. Okay, I don't see any questions here either. So it actually has brought us right to 4 o'clock, which is the end of our class. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop on the path, because this is the very best thing you could ever do for yourself, those close to you, and all of humanity. Because as you're becoming a more peaceful, more joyful person, where you're not causing harm to others, this is benefiting you, because you're not going to be experiencing harm coming back to you. It's benefiting the people around you, because they're not experiencing harm coming from you. And then it's benefiting all of humanity, because you're becoming more and more peaceful, and there's less and less ripples in the world of harm going out into the world. So thank you for your dedication and interest to learn and grow and develop. As you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. You're welcome to attend anything that I do, whether it's in person or online. And if you need help to know where to get plugged into any of our learning opportunities, just let me know and I'll help you. So have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day, whatever you do, and perhaps I'll see you in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee Kap. You're welcome. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.